Hi, everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. My name is Bex, and I am on the events team here at Books Are Magic. We're so excited to celebrate the release of You Dreamed of Empires with Álvaro Enrigue and Laura Perciasepe. But before we get into that, I have a few logistics to point out. We'll be doing a hand-raised Q&A at the end of the discussion, so think of your questions, hold them tight. They will be answered. After the talk, Álvaro will be signing and personalizing books near where you checked in. We will point that out and give you directions when the time comes. If you're joining us virtually via the live stream, you can buy your copy of You Dreamed of Empires using the link in the live stream description. And so now a little bit about the glorious reasons you're here tonight. I'm going to read from the shelf talker of our very own manager, Nick, about why he loves this book. And he says, well, Álvaro Enrigue has done it again. You Dreamed of Empires was like no other book I had ever read. The next closest was a book called Sudden Death, go figure, which, if you don't get that joke, is also his book. This novel is so incredibly well crafted, thoroughly researched, and is so damn funny. This novel fascinated me. I could not put it down. It is hard to call this the best book I will read in 2024 in the first week of January, but I don't see how I can't. Álvaro is a genius. I also want to throw out there that Nick does not write a lot of shelf talkers, so this is very high praise. They are nodding in the back because I'm correct. So take that how you will. About our lovely guest tonight, Álvaro Enrigue is a Mexican writer who is a Coleman Center Fellow and a fellow at the Princeton University Program in Latin American Studies. His work has appeared in the New York Times, N+1, London Review of Books, and El País, among others. His books include Sudden Death and have been awarded the Heralde Prize, the Barcelona Prize, and the Poniatowska Prize. I did not ask how to pronounce that before. He lives in New York with his family and teaches Latin American literature at Hofstra. Laura Perciasepe.
The last name.
I was so ready. I know. I was senior editor at Riverhead Books. So excited to have her here tonight. Acquires and edits literary fiction, narrative nonfiction, and works in translation. Her authors have won the National Book Award for Translated Literature, the International Dublin Literary Award, and the New York Public Library Young Minds Award, and have been finalists for the International Booker Prize and many others. They include Álvaro, Santiago Jose Sanchez, Katie Kitamura, Brian Washington, Samantha Schweblin, Yumiri Aro Kwan, and Juan Gabriel Vasquez. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming Álvaro and Laura.
I begin, you begin.
Yeah, so Álvaro's going to read a little bit first.
I'm gonna read. Thank you. I'm very stubborn about keeping my accent, so I'm sorry. I really want to have an excellent accent, but I can't. When almost at the end of the causeway they reached the arc that led to the natural islet at the heart of the empire, it's like the Cité in Paris, said Aguilar. They were met by Moctezuma's party. Capes of iridescent feathers and cloaks in colors that they hadn't known existed. Men in the shelter of canopies, and behind them hieratic maidens more simply dressed but made up as if they had just arrived from another world and were still adjusting to this one. The warriors wore skins and headdresses representing their guardian animals. Caldera, crested helmet, so bold and dashing, so gallant and Spanish, seemed about as majestic now as a bagpiper's bonnet. There were priests dressed up as dragons, warriors with feather plumes as lofty as temples. The Pipiltin, civilian and military, carried little bunches of flowers which they constantly brought to their noses, the delicacy of the gesture in contrast with the lunatic bellicosity of their attire. The conquistadores deemed it a charming custom, never thinking to associate it with their own rig. The Huaytlatuani, it was true, was taking his own sweet time. He was borne in under a canopy, perched on his throne, and parting the waters of Pipiltin priests and warriors. the bearers who carried him aloft, pipilting of such pipiltitude that they were all colua, lowered him carefully, and once down, he set foot on the ground rather distractedly. He smoothed his tunic, shook up his cape, and scratched the back of his head, knocking his headdress sideways and failing to straighten it, maybe because it made no difference. It was a glorious riot of feathers. Cortés dismounted, and despite how much he would have liked to make a spectacle of his arrogance and bad manners, dropped to one knee. He was, after all, in the presence of the most famous man in an entire world. The emperor approached him and motioned him for him to rise. Cortés did so, taking off his helmet. In a formulaic and lazy way, as if the Captain General were one of his own bureaucrats, Moctezuma said, "This is your city, Malinche and Huaycastilteca. This is your house, and we are your servants. Enter and take possession of it in the name of your king. Rest in the presence of a real emperor, a character out of the novels of chivalry of which he was so fond, tried to hug him." Moctezuma's generals leaped forward in unison to kill him. One, younger than the others and later introduced to them as the emperor's son-in-law, was the first to reach him and would have severed his jugular in a single bite if the major, always a step behind Moctezuma, hadn't moved between them and escorted the Captain General back to his horse, motioning for him to mount again. Before he did so, Moctezuma said through the translators, "Forgive General Cuauhtémoc. He's still very young, and he loves flowers so much that sometimes he cuts them too hastily in his rush to smell them." Cortés either didn't understand or didn't take the hint. With a glance at the general, he said, "A pleasure," and got back on his horse. Then came the negotiations, strained and too hasty regarding the Tlaxcalteca troops, and the announcement that Moctezuma would visit them at the old houses after the evening meal. The emperor went back the way he'd come, just as arrogantly as he had arrived. In the end, the encounter was mostly disappointing, neither memorable nor fruitful. It left no one satisfied. The conquistadores were disappointed by the brevity of the ceremony, and Moctezuma's blatant lack of interest in hearing the message of Charles I, and the Mexica were confused that the Huaytlatoani had finally decided to leave his chambers only to meet this pack of clowns. If there's anything Spaniards and Mexicans have always agreed upon, is that nobody is less qualified to govern than the government itself. Thank you.
Thank you. It was so nice to hear you read that. Thank you for everybody for coming out on this rainy night. I will be playing the part of Daniel Alarcon.
That's right. He got hurt playing soccer.
Yes.
And sends his pain as an offer to you.
But I feel very privileged to get to speak to you. I worked with Álvaro on both of his books, translated into English so far.
I have to say that I have always wanted to present a book with you. And
really?
Yes. So it's fantastic that we're doing this.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, these are the conversations that we get to have all the time. So now we get to have them in front of other people. We'll have to pretend we'll have to be serious and explain ourselves sometimes, I think.
Serious. Yes.
But yes, it is a privilege and a pleasure to be the person to edit Álvaro's books in English, and along with the brilliant Natasha Wimmer, who is in Mexico right now, I think. Yes, but otherwise would be here. But let me ask you some questions. So this is funny because, we work on the book like a year ago, and then goes through copy editing and does all these things, and then we talk about. So I have to remind myself.
The people in the hall doesn't have idea of how terrifying it is, Laura, telling you, let me
To be
ask you
asked
some
questions by me.
questions. It's 100 pages of questions.
I have all my notes here. This is the role of an editor. I mean, this novel is sort of a what if novel. It's sort of a revisionist history. It takes place, it sort of brings Tenochtitlan to life at the sort of height of Moctezuma's empire. I sort of know the answer to this already, but for all of our new friends here who haven't maybe read the book yet, what kind of drew you to write about this moment? I know there's a sort of story of excavation in Mexico City and youth and childhood, and there's all of these reasons, but why this sort of moment in history? And I know there is a connection to sudden death in your past books, and some of the characters are overlapping, but this book kind of takes place at this very pivotal moment, this pivotal day, I guess. And how did you kind of land on that moment to write the novel about?
I always tell different lies, so
Okay.
I will try to lie differently
A fiction
to
writer,
you,
yeah.
yes, to avoid repetition. I'm not completely sure. Well. There is the excavations story. I don't know where stories come from. Let's begin there. I don't have idea of where stories come from. They just, when they take you, and many times they don't become anything, and many others a short story becomes a novel, and it's, for me, it's a complete mystery. I know that there are super organized writers that know everything. Carlos Fuentes used to live in this mausoleum of his own books. He knew all the books he was going to write in his life. He knew since he was like 20, and he got the titles, and all his books had in the back like the list of future titles of Carlos Fuentes. I don't remember what I had today for breakfast. No, I don't. No, it's not. No. So I'm a very disorganized person. But there is. I have this long love story with Mexico City that now is becoming so popular that it's not interesting. I will change of light now. No, I do maybe because I was not born there.
Yeah.
Maybe because I don't remember my previous life to Mexico City, but I was not born there. I always felt fascinated by the city, and I always had this sensation that I have here, that is like to be a tourist, to be like an eternal, the only living boy in New York, the only living boy in Mexico City. So Mexico City has that attraction to me.
Yeah.
And then there is the excavation thing, that it's a real story. You have to interrupt me, because when I get nervous, I never stop talking. In 1979, when I was 10, the perfect age to be like under a big
I
impact.
feel like every 10-year-old wants to be an archaeologist, right? Or
and,
no?
and every
Was that just me?
54-year-old
Okay.
also.
Okay.
Yeah. I always wanted to be an archaeologist, and I think that this is an exercise. Everybody is a frustrated novelist. I am a frustrated archaeologist that writes novels. That lawyers are, etc. The thing is, Mexico City was not as it is now when I was a child. Now, Mexico City was, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but it was Varsovia. Varsovia under the communist regime. It was like a concrete town. There were no trees. It was infamous. And what united all the people from Mexico City was one single feeling, that was, I want to live. I don't want to live here. I don't want to grow up here. Mexico City was a city, like myself, without self-esteem. So when in 1979, there are these guys fixing a light pole in downtown Mexico City that was in ruins. This is in the very apex of the National Revolutionary regime time. So Mexico was provincial. It would just look into itself, and we believe all the myths that were fed to us in school. So it was a really not connected at all city, very provincial, very remote. So they are digging this, and they found this round stone that represents the moon in its, I don't know the word in English, in its smallest size, la luna menguante in Spanish, I don't know in English, that is a broken in pieces moon. So they find it, and and we know, everybody knew because of the chronicles, that wherever that stone was where the steps of the main temple of Mexico City, of Tenochtitlan, were. So finding that was like something we follow up or not. And the president, who was completely crazy, José López Portillo, said, yes, let's dig it. Let's dig the thing. So Matos Moctezuma, a very young archaeologist in that moment, begins to unearth Tenochtitlan, which was something we had learned in the public school free textbooks. It was something weird and strange. And they do it really fast because the political times demand a victory for the government. So I am like 11 years old, in maybe 6th or 7th year, and we go in a school trip to this new open, like we in Spanish we say ruins, which in English sounds awful, like rests of Tenochtitlan. And this is a school thing, so it's like 100 kids, everybody with their sandwich and the refreshment. Everything is depressing. The middle day sun of Mexico City that can kill you because it's 3,000 meters over the sea. So we're there. And they take us to Tenochtitlan, and I was expecting, of course, well, the main temple of Tenochtitlan.
Yeah.
And what we see is the new archaeology of Eduardo Matos Moctezuma. That is, they don't do anything. They just dig and let the things as they are. They don't touch anything. So you don't see the temple, that was an enormous temple, but the pieces, like what was left of the temple, when the Spaniards decided to put in the citadel of the temples of Tenochtitlan a small Spanish town. So what you see is, like, there was a temple, and they cut it like this, and what you see is the different stages of construction of the temple that began in 1324 and made it all the way to 1519. So it's like 10 successive temples that when you see, you don't understand. You just see a bunch of rocks, a bunch of stairs that are one after the other, and they're the ceiling. You don't understand anything. But at the very bottom of that, and I remember that as an illumination, so I can be faithful to my memory. At the bottom of that, there is the original temple, the temple of 1325, sorry, I said 24, of 1325. Mexico City is an 800 years old city, is more or less the age of Berlin. So it, in fact, next year it will turn 800 years, and no one will put any attention to it in America. Do you remember when there was the 500 years of the fall of Tenochtitlan? We tried to explain the New York Times that there is no New York if Tenochtitlan doesn't fall, but the New York Times didn't buy our idea. So the same thing will happen next year. Now the oldest city in the Americas will turn 800 years, and no one will know except us. Now we know. Now we know.
We'll have to set a calendar reminder.
Sorry, I'm gonna finish. so I'm walking there, and I see the original temple that you can see if you pay 17 pesos and go to Mexico City and pay $1,000 because they are thieves. But nevertheless, yes, the airplanes. No, we should make a revolution. Anyway, we're walking there, and I see this tiny temple. Not the glorious Tenochtitlan temple, not what has been described, not the colors, the hallucinogenic thing, nothing of that, but this tiny little temple made by a group of warriors that arrived to an islet in the center of a lake that was full of serpents and ugly animals and nopals, you think? Cactuses. This. And they arrived there because it was the only place they could get in the lake, and they put their little temple there. And seeing that, and I'm sorry if I am sentimental, and I swear to you that I hate nationalism of any sort, but the narrations that constitute us are important, I think. So I'm 11 years old or 12, and I see that, and I see that's where the eagle stood on the cactus and ate the serpent. That's it, that's the place. Under that thing, that bunch of ugly rocks, there is the heart of Tenoch. The city began here. In that moment, 790 years ago. And it was such an illuminating moment. And that moment that I had, that is very cursi, I cannot say that in English because it doesn't exist. Nevertheless, kind of happened to all the city, and the city began to like have a personality. No? We were nothing, and we were Rome one day. There was a really old city under us, and that city explained us and was our heritage to take care of. So that produced a change in the whole spirit of Mexico City, the birth of the self-esteem of the city, and like the love for itself of the city. And it marked me and many other people. So the obsession, I think, comes from there.
And the city is almost like a character in this book too. I mean, it all takes place in the walls of this sort of place that you sort of thought in that moment of. One of the things that I also really love about the book is the leaders, these people, the sort of real historical figures, these powerful people that we think about, like Cortez and Moctezuma and all of the warriors that were with them. They're rendered as very real people in the book with all of their flaws and farts and, things that they do. Smells, yes. Yeah, the book is so evocative of smells. I do think so. It's like the first scene is so, you can smell it all. But I think, that sort of mix of very sort of real and earthy and kind of down to earth maybe depiction of these people who are these huge historical figures. What are you kind of saying about power there, or how people are depicted in history, and kind of turning it on its head a little bit? Sorry.
No. It's a very good question. Okay. that I'm feeling that I can answer honestly for the first time.
Okay, good.
I think that many writers write to show the beauty of the world.
Yeah.
Others as Saint Paul recommended, to give testimony of the world before it ends next week. I write about my resentments.
Yeah.
I write about what makes me angry. I write about mainly my resentments. I'm Mexican. I resent. What's the problem? so the yes, and I'm a Mexican born in the 60s. So now it's a completely different world. But I have been very uncomfortable during all my life with the way in which the pre-Hispanic Mexico is represented. By the foes, I don't have to talk about that, but the allies too. I think that no one was more harmful to indigenous America than Jim Morrison. I'm sorry, but it's true. This mystical thing and the eagles and the so I was very serious. I am not very serious about most of the things, but I am serious about very few things. And I was very serious about representing the city of Tenochtitlan as the true wonder it was. It even in the letters of Cortez himself, who had personally destroyed the most wonderful city in the world, he says, "I'm sorry. We should not have done this. It's a shame what we did. He died ashamed of having destroyed a floating city, a perfect ecosystem, like a wonder of the world." So I tried to be loyal to that, and I tried to be loyal to what I think was the political reality of that encounter. This is not my class on first contact between indigenous and European people in the Americas and the literary texts that were produced in the first 20 years. This is not it. but
we'll get a little bit.
But we'll get a little bit of that. We only have one perspective of that conflict. I know it's boring. I know everybody's tired. But it's strictly true. We only have one perspective of that. There was only one person that wrote about Mexico City in splendor, that we have a testimony of. And that person was the imbecile of Hernán Cortés, the genocidal figure of Hernán Cortés, the worst writer ever. ever. You read, some 40 years later, Bernalias del Castillo writes his true history of the conquest of Mexico, criticizing Cortés, letters that became a bestseller immediately when they were published, because they speak of true wonders. No? So that's like a first take on what we call, I think improperly, the conquest of Mexico. No? And then you can go to, I don't know, Hugh Thomas. Now I will forget all the names, or I will forget all the names, so I will stop pretending that I know things. But you go to all those authors that have written about the incredible, the epic trip of the Spaniards to Mexico City, about the unbelievably violent and brutal, but also charged with electricity war between the Castilians and the Mexica. You know, every time someone has write that story, you read it and you are like reading a novel. You're like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Even when you know exactly what's going to happen next. You read it like grabbing yourself to the chair. And the letters of Hernán Cortés, it's really hard to be awake when you're reading them. He's telling the best history in modernity, and you're and I read them all the time because I teach them all the time, and you're like falling asleep. It's just a nightmare. You're like a baby, fall to one side of the other, and that's the only real testimony we have. You know? Then there are like 4 or 5 more testimonies of soldiers that were with him. Some trustable, some not trustable. And then we have like tiny little pieces of things written by indigenous people when they were already college professors in the Colegio of Santa Cruz of Tlatelolco. So they were already Latinized. You know? The first professors of Latin and Nahua in the College of La Santa Cruz of Tlatelolco never saw Tenochtitlan. They were just, they were born in 1522, 23, 24, etc. So they were just saying what the older people said. You know? So we don't have a testimony. And then the Spaniards, first of all, the expedition of Cortés was illegal. No, it was, they were a bunch of pirates. I just read this, I will not remember the name or the title, sorry. Pirate, the guy who wrote, no, I don't forget anything. I'm nervous.
Wait, is it nonfiction?
Wait. Yes. The Dawn of Everything was exactly. I will not try to pronounce him. He left a book, a little book before he died about pirates and the utopia of pirates, and he tells incredibly smart things about pirates. Sorry, I'm like a child. I like soldiers and pirates.
Yeah.
Yes. Boats, horses. Sorry. So he says that the pirates used to have a black flag with a skull because they were always people who had been participating in a mutiny before. You know, there was a tyrant captain in a commercial boat, and they would rebel and become pirates. So they had a black flag because they were announcing that they were already dead. They could not return to England because they would be hanged, or to the Netherlands or to Portugal, wherever they come from, you know, because they would be hanged immediately because they were mutinous people. So that like esoteric black flag with the skull is really an announce of people saying we're dead. You know, so we will do whatever we want. We will spend our money in the most stupid ways because we cannot go back home to spend our money. And if you are in the middle, we will kill you because we are already condemned. So it doesn't matter. Yeah. That spirit explains the expedition of Hernán Cortés. It was a criminal expedition. They had broken all laws to make it to Mexico. So they didn't have anything to lose. And they moved to Mexico City with that spirit. So the letters of Cortés are justifications to the king. You know? We broke the law like big time. We should be killed. We commit all the possible crimes, but we have this for you. That's what the letters say. And the distance between the letters is explained because they didn't know if they were going to win or not. Yeah. So that's like a really deformed testimony. The letters of Cortés are emails to the king saying, sorry, I have COVID, so I am answering to you 1 year later. But you know what? I did this. So that's all we have. So an answer that takes forever. Sorry.
No. I think I see what you're saying. No.
So that deformed, Eurocentric, abusive, like Castillo-centric point of view has prevailed in the way we see the indigenous world of Mexico previous to the arrival of the Spaniards. Yeah. So for me, it was important to imagine how it really was. The idea of Moctezuma as a coward, it's a construction that happens late in the 16th century. The idea that they were regular people, so there is a political content in that. Yeah. Not only laughing about the powerful. I could laugh about Hernán Cortés forever, but that was not the main interest. The main interest was to show that the people from the Americas were not superstitious, that they had this economy based in human sacrifice, but it was an economy, and it was ruled, and it avoided further messes in the war, etc., etc. So I was trying to produce that more fair portrait of a glorious city.
You were talking about resentment earlier, and going off of this, can we talk a little bit about the sort of concept of revenge in the book? Because I think like there is this sort of idea that this is, to me, it's sort of like a revenge fantasy too, like, taking back some of these, kind of possibilities of what could have happened in that encounter. Was that sort of in the back of your mind? I mean, it sounds like sort of you're trying to kind of, take Cortés down a few notches, but then, in the book, I don't want to give anything away, but, he really gets his due.
The idea of cutting Cortés a few notches because he was an incredibly short guy. Yeah. He was. Okay. I don't laugh about that in the novel because I am a respectful gentleman. But but he was an incredibly short guy, very short. Sorry.
No, but was this idea of revenge, or sort of like in your mind as you were writing?
I have a much more impulsive and like instinctive thing when I write. That I think revenge is a very sophisticated feeling for when I'm having fun like crazy. Yeah. When I'm writing a novel, but I just have theories about why novels are written and because they are mysterious for me also. But I think that if you were a Mexican kid, if you were a Mexican boy or girl, if you always, more if you grew up in Mexico City, you are always thinking why he didn't kill them when it was still possible to get them. And I don't think that history could have changed more. The waves. Look what happened 200 years after in the U.S. The waves of Europeans were uncontrollable, and the Mexican people gave Europe a precious gift that was corn. What Europe needed to conquest the Americas and then important parts of Asia and Africa was a better supply of protein, and it was corn what produced the cows that could let the Europeans be bigger than Hernán Cortés, etc., etc., etc. And you must remember that corn is a technology, is not a natural thing. Corn doesn't exist in nature. Corn is an invention. If you plant a seed of corn in your garden, it grows, flowers, produces corn, dies, and the corn never comes out again. The corn needs a human to plant it because it was designed in the Valley of Puebla many millennia before. I don't know why am I speaking about
No, but that's sort of, the things that were taken, that is one of them.
But what was the question?
Oh, revenge. whether that was a driving
revenge.
concept
So
for
there,
you.
there is this eternal fantasy, I think, in a Mexican kid. Why? No?
Yeah.
How the world could be if Moctezuma had done the thing that he had to do fast
Yeah.
instead of trying to like do things and well, and what the book proposes is that it's the horses, no?
So the book is sort of suggesting that the horses that Cortez brings are very appealing, intriguing to Moctezuma, and that's essentially why he wins this time around, because he is so enamored of these horses and wants the horses.
But if you see the indigenous nations that adopted the horse resisted the invasion of the Europeans until the 20th century, no? Until the 19th century, and some of them the early 20th century. So it was not the powder, you say, powder, pólvora. Yes,
Gunpowder.
It was not the powder. It was not the whatever. It was the horses. No, what was the massive destruction gun of the Europeans was the horse. So if Moctezuma had adopted the horse,
Yeah.
we would be living in a world that it would be equally awful, but we would have still Tenochtitlan. There could be a lake, but there is just cement all over the place, no? And we could, like, yeah.
One of my favorite characters of all of your books is Malinali, the princess turned translator. One of the smartest people, I think, among all of this group of characters. The scene with, and I'm not going to say it properly. Yes, you knew what I was going to say. Who is the sister and wife of Moctezuma? These two powerful women, but and very different. They're both princesses, but they're in very different circumstances. Malinali's been enslaved. There's a scene with them towards the end of the book. It's one of my favorites. Can you talk about sort of putting them together? They're these two powerhouses as well, and sort of how you had the idea to do that.
Should I say the truth? Yeah. Yeah, I have worked in at least a couple of books and in a lot of non-fiction pieces in the character of Malinali,
Yeah.
because I think that is key to understanding
She's in
so
sudden
many
death
things.
too. Yeah.
She's in sudden death, and everybody knows who she is. No, she passed to history as La Malinche, and is the translator of Hernán Cortés, and that the Mexican tradition kept as an emblem of a traitor, no? Which is really stupid, because there was not Europeans and indigenous people in those times. No, everybody was people. The word for indigenous people in the Americas in Nahua appears very late. No? Appears like a century after the fall of Tenochtitlan, and it's a word that says "us from here." So before that, there was people from different political entities, and the Europeans were one of them. So the idea of betraying the indigenous people is completely dumb. No? Nevertheless, is what I thought, what I was educated. No?
Yeah.
The school books could teach you that thanks to the tradition of La Malinche, Hernán Cortés, whatever. No? So I think that there has been a generational restitution of that figure. If you go to the sources, it's always very funny that in the indigenous sources, the people is always speaking to her and never to him.
Mm-hmm.
No, people addressed Malinali, not Hernán Cortés. Hernán Cortés was like the companion of Malinali. No? And you have to remember that the story, I write books because I cannot stop talking, but that Mexico that Tenochtitlan and then everything else falls because there is this enormous army of indigenous people, a part of which are the Spaniards, a small part of which are the Spaniards with the horses. But the real winners of the war were the Tlaxcalteca, not the Spaniards. Then the Spaniards managed to get the city, and with it the empire. but it was a long process. No, the war was won by indigenous people originally. As usual, I am lost in
Malinali
my resentment.
and Atotoshli.
Well,
These two powerhouse women come together at this sort of
I've
culmination
always
of the book.
found fascinating the story of Malinali, no? And I think that is a great literary opportunity. How the conversations happened, no? Because Malinali spoke Maya and Nahua, because she was a Nahua princess, and she spoke Popoloca too, but she spoke Maya and Nahua, because she was a Nahua princess. And then Aguilar, who was a Spanish priest that had become a slave in Akumal, a place you surely have been in your vacation, because now it's really near Cancun. He was a slave there. He spoke Maya and Spanish. So in order to speak, they needed this double channel translation that surely explains everything that I do wrong. It's like everything was wrong in the communications since the very beginning. It's very fun to work with that.
Yeah.
No? And it's really interesting. And how who knows what they say, what they remember, who knows what a mess was that. And clearly everybody had their own agenda.
Yeah.
No, Malinali had a very clear agenda, no, to defeat these guys and keep Tenochtitlan. Not the empire. No one thought about the empire in that moment, including Hernán Cortés. They were thinking about keeping the jewel of the crown, no? The city. They were thinking about taking the city. So that is a fascinating figure. And then Atotoshli it's a fictional character,
Yeah.
of course. The name comes. There is a body of historians that say that there was a woman empress of Tenochtitlan who was named Atotoshli. I don't know if that's real or not, and it really doesn't matter, but I think that the name is beautiful, and the figure is there floating, no? So you can pull Atotoshli as a woman of power. And they were these two characters that I found fascinating. In the novel, Moctezuma is going through a depression because he knows that the empire is coming down to pieces, which is kind of historical. The Triple Alliance was falling in pieces when the Spaniards arrived. And he's in a depression, and he's looking for wisdom through magic mushrooms, mainly, and other substances. So he's, during all the novel, he's like super high, or not trying to know what to do to keep the horses, and maybe keep the Spaniards as beautiful thingies to collect.
He's interested. He's intrigued by them.
Like they're
yeah.
pink, he says.
Yeah.
He's interested in all of this, but he has to resolve the problem of the empire that is real. No, it really was falling in pieces when the Spaniards arrived. So in the novel, Moctezuma is just in another planet. No, he's so high that he listens to T-Rex. You know? Like he's just completely high. And the one trying to keep the empire together is his wife and sister. Moctezuma was not married to his sister, of course. He was not married to his sister. So this completely imaginary character, it's a woman that is powerful, but that operates on the underground. No, she cannot show as a powerful woman, so she's always like, yes, Tlatuani, yes, and then she operates and does what you do in a court when you are not the most powerful person in the court. So I was very proud of it. I was very proud of my two characters, and one of my children, Dylan, says, "Dad," which is so terrifying, no, Dad. he says, talks to me in Italian, I don't know why, Babbo. He says in Florentine, not even Italian, Babbo. He says, that's terrifying, no? Like when Laura tells you, I have a question. And I said, yes, and he says, so there is powerful woman in your novel? And I proudly say, yes. And he says, but do they interact? Do they talk? And I'm like, I have to learn from our children. No, our children are our masters, and they understand the world much better than I do. You know?
Do you know the Bechdel test? Yeah.
He was talking. Yes.
Yes. So there's a
he
writer.
lectured
It's
me
like,
about
do two women talk in piece of cultural, art or book or movie, and it's not just about like a guy.
And it's not about a guy.
Yeah.
Well,
they're talking about the horses.
Yeah, he instructed me.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And
Yes.
I said that I was going to set the truth.
Yeah.
And I went and researched, and I have to say that it was one of the scenes that I more enjoyed writing
it's
about the
really
novel.
fun to read, too.
It was just
Yeah.
really fun and beautiful, and
Yeah.
that it gave me the opportunity of working. Again, I'm not a planning writer. I would never write what I write on Monday in Tuesday. No, I don't have idea of what will happen the next time. And in that sense, this gave me the opportunity of placing Malinali in front of a horse. No?
Yeah.
That I think that is an important cultural thing. No? While I was doing that, of course, I was not thinking about the symbolic thing of everything.
Yeah.
But Malinali sees a horse, and not Malinali, sorry, a Totochtli.
Yeah.
No? The Mexica Empress sees a horse, and then this beautiful thing, if you're a writer, the chance of someone describes something for the first time.
Yeah.
No?
It's
so
really
it was a really nice thing, and as all the changes that come when you are finishing a book, it gave order to the rest of the
Yeah.
book. No, if you don't understand your own novel until you finish it, and then you have to begin again and organize, and this was a very important. I have to work since the beginning again to make the two characters arrive to a
Intersect
center
in that
yeah.
moment.
I think
Yeah.
in a very central moment of the novel, because it's after that the action, the end
The
begins.
climax, yeah.
After their conversation, everybody shows their true colors.
All hell breaks loose. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a wonderful moment towards the end of the book, which you all will have to read to appreciate. But I think now we're supposed to answer questions, open it up for questions. So does anybody have any questions for Álvaro about this book, about Sudden Death?
I just have to say that I'm very thankful that you are here, because it's like a political act against the major and the governor to be here. No? They began scolding us for going out early in the morning. It was like what happened with Tough New York. So thanks very much for toughening the rain, etc., and not making out of this a very sad event. I'm very thankful. Said so, ma'am.
Any
So
questions?
how much does one need to really know about the history of Tenochtitlan to, really enjoy the book, understand it, appreciate it?
I'm supposed to repeat the question. How much do you need to know about the history of Tenochtitlan to really appreciate the story? Personally, I don't think you need to know very much. You just need to know that Cortez conquested it.
I work my ass off so you didn't have
Yeah.
to know. And sorry
Yeah.
for the French, but I learned English watching films that were done for you and not for me. They are American films. So, but I worked like crazy to like drop the necessary information in the novel without forcing it. I don't know if I was successful or not in that, of course, but I was trying to have a very gentle hand when like painting the panoramas, and because unbelievably almost no one, and that it's the same thing that the beginning letter, no one.
Well, the beginning letter, but also something that we did in this edition, the American or the English edition, was we have this cast of characters list in the beginning, which I don't think, did they go back and add that in the Spanish one or no?
No, I think in Spanish there was only the letter.
Okay.
That is fiction. I'm sorry.
So in the beginning,
Spanish is the letter to
yes.
the copy editor, and in English is the letter to Natasha,
to the translator. But there's sort of like a Russian novel or like a play. There's a list of characters in the beginning, and all of the different names and kind of roles that the sort of main cast of characters have. And so you right? That's still in there, right? Okay, she's looking. I'm like, can we double check that this actually happened? Because this is the editorial conversations that you have.
I was very resistant. I always write books in which there are too many characters.
Well, they all have different names at some point too. Their names change.
Half of the characters you can Google, and another half not. And then there is in general the Latin American thing. No, Pelé was not named Pelé.
Yeah.
You know, we have nicknames, you know, and no one is addressed by their name, no, ever. You know, so people. Yeah, I was thinking about the 25 nicknames of the baby. And in pre-Hispanic Mexico, that is worse because Nahua is a language that declines, like Latin or German. So depending who's talking to whom in which circumstance, they use a different name, of which only the beginning is the same. So it's hard to follow. So I have always been very resistant to putting lists of names, because if the Russian writers are not forced to do the son of and daughter of thing in a list at the end, why a Mexican writer resentment has to do it? No? Yeah. I can perfectly, well, not perfectly, but I can say Worcestershire sauce. Why the fuck cannot you say Chalchihuitlique? You can. You just practice and say it. You know? That's not what my very cordial letter to the translator says. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So to answer the question though, I think there is this, you know, kind of a little bit of a guide in the beginning.
There is a little bit in the Spanish edition. They were so freaked out that they put a map of Tenochtitlan.
Oh, they did.
They did in the beginning.
Maybe we should have done it.
So for people to understand the concept of a floating city.
But you know, I did kind of look up what it looked like when I was editing, and the book is so visual. You really have this you can feel and see and smell what the city looked like, and you do such a good job with that. But
the obsession with the smells comes from there, no? How to explain how the city works,
and it this sort of how all of the different characters are moving through it at different points, and
sorry.
No, but and I remember when I was working on the book too, just kind of like looking up, and it sort of inspires a lot of other readings and curiosities as well.
Which takes us to the true answer to your first question. That was, can I do this? When I was beginning to think about them, I always wanted to write a novel that happened in Tenochtitlan. You know? So it was like, can I do this? And I was maybe 51 at that moment. It was like now or never. Because writers decay. They write really ugly books after a certain age and amount of books. Almost all of them. I will not name names, but almost all of them. It's terrible. It's an horrid thing. So it was like, if I don't do it now, I will never be able to do this. And so I think that the true intention behind the novel is to paint this painting of the city that has obsessed me and a lot of people. A floating city. So cool.
Okay. But thank you.
Thank you.
And now,
so much.
Bex will tell us what to do.
Thank you all again for coming here tonight. Thank you so much for Álvaro and Laura for this lovely conversation. A reminder, if you're still with us on the live stream, you can buy books at the link description. If you are here with us in person, we have so many copies for you to buy. You definitely forgot to buy someone a gift for the holidays, and we have your answer in the back by the register. Álvaro will be signing copies. Also near the register, the lovely Amalia is pointing over there. There was this little saloon door. It's going to be great. You'll get copies signed. Please do not forget to bring your items so we can start packing up those chairs. And thank you all so much for being here.
Remember that the author has 4 children.
Yeah.
before
Support
not
the
buying the
author.
book, think about 4
Yeah.
cats and 1 dog.
Support the author, support the bookstore, support your happiness. Thank you.
Thank
You guys so much.
No, thank you.